July 20th, 1944. Deep inside a forest bunker in East Prussia known as the Wolf's Lair, Adolf Hitler is leaning over a large oak map table surrounded by his top military staff. Just a few feet away, a briefcase sits quietly on the floor, its contents ticking down to a fateful moment. This wasn't just any briefcase. It was a bomb placed there by a man who had looked Hitler in the eye only moments before. This was the climax of Operation Valkyrie, the most audacious attempt to assassinate the Führer and end the Second World War. But how did it come to this? How did a high-ranking German officer, a decorated war hero, become the central figure in a plot to kill his own commander-in-chief? To understand this incredible story, we need to go back. The man who carried that briefcase was Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg. At first glance, he was the model German officer, aristocratic, intelligent, and fiercely patriotic. He'd served with distinction in Poland, France, and North Africa. But his experiences on the front lines, witnessing the brutalities of the regime and the catastrophic military decisions, slowly turned his patriotism for Germany into opposition against Hitler. He saw the war as a pointless slaughter that was destroying his country from within. Stauffenberg wasn't alone. A growing network of military officers and civilian leaders disillusioned with the Nazi regime had been conspiring for years. They saw Hitler as a madman leading Germany to total ruin. Early attempts to remove him had failed, but with Stauffenberg they found a new, daring leader. What made Stauffenberg the perfect man for the job was his unique position. After being severely wounded in Tunisia, losing his left eye, his right hand, and 2 fingers on his left, he was reassigned to Berlin as the Chief of Staff for the Reserve Army. This new role gave him something priceless: direct, regular access to Hitler during military briefings. It was an opportunity no other conspirator had. The plan was codenamed Operation Valkyrie. Ironically, Valkyrie was originally a legitimate military plan, designed by the German army to mobilize the reserves in case of a breakdown of civil order or an internal uprising. The conspirators brilliantly decided to hijack this existing plan. Their idea was to assassinate Hitler and then use the Valkyrie orders to seize control of Berlin, arrest key Nazi officials, and take command of the armed forces. They would announce to the world that Hitler was dead and that a new provisional government was in charge, ready to negotiate peace with the Allies. The core of the plan depended on one thing: Hitler's death. Stauffenberg was tasked with the assassination itself. He would carry a bomb in his briefcase to a briefing at the Wolf's Lair. The bomb was made of British plastic explosives, equipped with a silent acid-based timer. The plan was to set the timer, place the briefcase as close to Hitler as possible, make an excuse to leave the room, and fly back to Berlin to lead the coup. On the morning of July 20th, Stauffenberg flew to the Wolf's Lair with his aide, Werner von Heffen. The atmosphere was tense. Complications arose almost immediately. First, the meeting was moved from the usual underground concrete bunker to a wooden barrack above ground. This was a huge problem. An explosion inside the thick walls of the concrete bunker would have been contained, magnifying its deadly force. In the wooden barrack, the blast would dissipate through the thin walls and open windows, significantly reducing its impact. Then, time pressure, Stauffenberg was rushed. He went to a private room to arm the 2 bombs he had brought, but an officer knocked on the door, telling him the briefing was about to start. In the haste, he was only able to arm one of the 2 explosive blocks. He managed to prime the 10-minute fuse, then walked into the conference room. Inside, about 24 officers were gathered around the heavy oak map table. Hitler was at the center. Stauffenberg, using his hearing difficulties from his war injuries as an excuse, asked to be placed close to the Führer to hear better. He positioned himself just a few feet away from Hitler, placing the briefcase under the table on the inside of a thick wooden support. A few minutes later, he excused himself to take a prearranged phone call. He walked out of the barrack, leaving the ticking bomb behind. At 12:42 p.m., a massive explosion ripped through the room. Smoke, fire, and debris filled the air. Stauffenberg, watching from a safe distance, saw the building erupt. He was convinced no one could have survived that blast. He and Heffen bluffed their way through the security checkpoints and rushed to the airfield to fly back to Berlin. Their mission, they believed, was a success. But it wasn't. In a twist of fate that changed history, someone had moved the briefcase. Just before the explosion, an officer, finding the briefcase in his way, moved it to the other side of the thick table leg. That simple, unknowing act shielded Hitler from the full force of the blast. The heavy table and its support absorbed most of the impact. While 4 people were killed and many others injured, Hitler survived. He was shaken, his trousers were shredded, and his eardrums were perforated, but he was alive. Back in Berlin, the coup began to unfold, but it was built on a false premise. The conspirators, led by General Friedrich Olbricht, were hesitant. They delayed issuing the Valkyrie orders for crucial hours, waiting for concrete confirmation of Hitler's death. That confirmation never came. Stauffenberg landed in Berlin around 4:30 p.m., shocked to learn that nothing had been done. He immediately took charge, frantically issuing orders and making calls to rally support. For a few brief, chaotic hours, it seemed like the coup might still succeed. The plotters managed to arrest some Nazi officials and secure parts of the city, but the window of opportunity was closing fast. News began to spread from the Wolf's Lair that the FROR was alive. Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister in Berlin, played a key role in crushing the coup. He managed to get Hitler on the phone with a key army commander who was about to side with the conspirators. Hearing Hitler's voice was enough. The coup collapsed as quickly as it had begun. By nightfall, troops loyal to the regime surrounded the conspirators' headquarters. A brief gunfight broke out, and Stauffenberg was shot in the shoulder. The leaders of the plot were quickly rounded up. General Friedrich Fromm, the commander of the reserve army, who had known about the plot but tried to play both sides, sought to cover his tracks. He hastily convened a court-martial and sentenced Stauffenberg and 3 others to death. Shortly after midnight, just hours after their bold attempt, Klaus von Stauffenberg and his co-conspirators were taken to a courtyard and executed by firing squad. His last words were reportedly, "Long live our sacred Germany." In the aftermath, the regime's revenge was swift and brutal. The Gestapo launched a massive manhunt, arresting over 7,000 people. Around 5,000 were executed, including many who had only the slightest connection to the plot. The purge decimated the old German military aristocracy and anyone suspected of disloyalty. Operation Valkyrie was a failure. It didn't end the war, and it didn't topple the Nazi regime, but it stands as a powerful testament that even in the darkest of times, there were brave individuals who were willing to risk everything for what they believed was right. They weren't traitors. They were patriots who tried to save their country from total destruction. The story of Klaus von Stauffenberg and the 20th of July plot is a reminder of the profound moral courage it takes to stand up against tyranny, even when the odds are stacked against you. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next dive into history. See you next time.